Hi guys, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Nick Egan Times. We have an awesome guest on this episode. We have Alex Triantafilou, Chairman of the Republican Party, Hamilton County, judge, lawyer, proud Greek, proud family man, a mad fan of the Cincinnati Bengals and Reds. Alex, Mr. Chairman, thank you for coming on here and giving up your time to be with me. I really appreciate it. How's it all going over there?
Well, Nick, it's good to be with you. Everything's going well here. As you know, in North America, it's cold where we are in the Midwest, but things are going just fine. And I'm honored to be with you on your podcast.
Thank you. And how was your holidays and the Christmas as well?
Well, all of that went very well. We're blessed with a big, beautiful family. You know all about that. And we were the COVID-19 coronavirus issue has kept us apart a little more than we would like, but we were able to squeeze in some good holiday celebrations and to enjoy the time together. So overall, good. We've managed to stay mostly healthy. Like the rest of the world, we're trying to get vaccinated right now, but overall things are good.
That's awesome. So getting straight into it, if you could just for the listeners, tell them who is Alex Triantafilou?
Well, first and foremost, he's second cousin to Nick Egan. but Alex Triantafilou is 49 years old. He's an attorney, a lawyer here in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the Midwestern United States. I have been a practicing attorney since 1996. Upon graduating law school, I became a prosecuting attorney here locally in the prosecuting attorney's office. I then became very politically active. Nick, as you know, and your listeners probably would be interested to know, I'm a strong Republican. I am been active with the Republican Party for more than 20 years. So after some period of activism, I was named a judge here in the local county court system in Hamilton County, where I served for 4 years. After that, I resigned my judgeship and went back into the private practice of law, and also took the helm of the leadership of my local Republican organization here in Southwest Ohio. Again, for the uninitiated, Ohio is a key battleground swing state. I've had a front row seat for lots of great political things in my life, been very fortunate. But that's my political and legal career. On the family side, proudly married to my wife, Jennifer. We have a son, Michael, who's 21 years old. And we are living happily here in the Midwestern United States.
That's awesome. Can you take us back to where it all began for you? So you are obviously a proud Greek man, proud family man. How did it all begin for you? So starting back when you were younger.
Well, I am a proud Greek American, that's for sure, a proud Greek for sure. My parents really both full-blooded Greeks. My mother, born and raised in Athens. My father, born here in the United States to two Greek immigrant parents, relatives of yours again, Nick. So we grew up in a fairly modest situation here in Cincinnati. Where it all began for me was just a great love of my country and politics and the political process. And like a lot of other Greeks, Nick, I think Greek people have an innate sense of community and politics. We obviously, as proud Greeks, know that the Greek culture has contributed so much to the world in the sense of self-governance and democracy. So I think for me, it started as a pretty young guy, as a political junkie, and that ultimately, for me, started this political career that's been interesting for me. And I don't mean to talk only about those things, but I'm hoping those are interesting to your listeners. I've had the high privilege and honor of meeting a couple of United States presidents, even most recently met with and had a short communication with President Trump. So I've been fortunate in that regard. But it all really started with two immigrant parents who taught me a love for my country and encouraged me to chase my dreams, and I did that.
That's awesome. Where is your favorite place in Greece to go back to that you would recommend to listeners to go to?
Well, I think everybody has to see Santorini once in their life. So I loved Santorini. And then our last trip to Greece, Nick, we went to a smaller, less touristy island called Milos That's Milos, the island of Milos. And that is a beautiful, beautiful place. Much, less touristy, less inhabited. Unfortunately, it's the secret's out, so it's getting busier every summer. But don't miss Santorini, and definitely don't miss the beautiful island of Milos. It has a couple of very famous landscapes that many of us have seen in popular culture and in TV commercials and the like for many years. But the island of Milos has these amazing vistas and views. Not quite as good as Santorini, but it definitely has something to offer. So those are two can't miss spots. And then, of course, I know some people don't love Athens. I love Athens. Athens is a busy, bustling, crowded city full of great history and architecture and a thriving downtown with wonderful tavernas. And if you can get past some of the traffic and maybe even some of the smog, it's a wonderful place.
Sounds awesome. I haven't been there myself personally, so to Milos anyway. I've been to Athens and Santorini, etc., but I haven't been there, so I'd love to go there one day.
Well, I encourage you and others to go. And of course, at the moment, I think Greece is shut down. It's certainly shut down to Americans. I suspect it's shut down mostly to foreign visitors. But once we all get past this crazy COVID-19, we can maybe all resume a normal life, and that would include some travel to the places we're talking about.
Right. So excited for that. Can't wait. You're a lifelong resident of Western Hamilton County, obviously in Cincinnati. What was it like growing up there your whole life? And what stories and memories can you share of that?
Well, again, for people listening, halfway around the globe, the reason that's part of my biography is the Cincinnati region where we live has got this fairly clear delineation between the western part of the city and the eastern part. These are somewhat stereotyped concepts that I'll discuss briefly, but the reason we talk about the western part of Hamilton County, western part of Cincinnati, is it tends to be the more working class, blue collar section of Hamilton County. And growing up there meant everything. I hope it taught me and my family, my brothers, my child, a work ethic and a kind of a steadfast, kind of traditional work ethic. So that's what that meant. My favorite memories growing up, interesting enough, are the travel that we were able to do, the limited amount of travel my dad was able to afford and provide for us back to Greece and other places. So those are wonderful memories. And Nick, I have to say this, my memories really are of kind of the international nature of my family, just the relationship that I've so thoroughly enjoyed with you and with your sibling. The idea that we might live here in Midwestern United States and in the middle of flyover country, as Americans like to say it, but we always felt that we had a greater connection, whether it was in Greece or with our family there in Australia. So some of my fondest memories here are just having those relationships outside of our small little enclave here in Western Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I agree too. Vice versa with the United States and specifically you and the rest of the family. It's been amazing. You completed your arts degree from the University of Cincinnati and then your law degree from Salmon P. Chase College of Law. How did you enjoy the process of becoming a lawyer and what made you decide you wanted a career in law?
Well, the process, it's in the United States, at least, it's fairly grueling in the sense that it's a lot of reading. It's a lot of reading, comprehension, and writing. There's a myth about lawyering, and I know the legal process is very different in foreign countries from the United States, but here there's a myth that one must be good at arguing or good on their feet or to be a good lawyer. And I've told law students and prospective law students this for years, that the skills necessary to get through law school are an ability to grind through hours of reading and regurgitating what you've read and comprehending what you've read in a rather expedited way and delivering delivering something coherent based on what you've read. So That part can be grueling. It's 4 years of undergraduate education here, and then it's an additional 3 years of specific training as a lawyer. So, I found the process, it's been a while now, it's been more than 20 years, but I find the process, I found it to be enlightening. It opened my eyes to lots of things I didn't really understand before. And I think a legal education has great value. So, again, very, very, very good experience at both of those academic institutions. And they continue to serve me well here as I practice law, into my 25th year.
Okay, that's awesome. And since 1996, you've been practicing law. Which 6 years of that you were handling hundreds of cases in court every day? How did you find that and enjoy that?
Well, being in the courtroom is a unique experience for people who don't go. For those of us who spend a lot of our careers there, it's still very exhilarating. If you love and appreciate the process of administering justice as I do, I've loved every minute of my courtroom time. Really, and every time I get a chance now to go to court with a client, which isn't as often as you'd like, especially with COVID, we've shut down the courts here. But I definitely miss being in the courtroom when I'm not there. So I have lots of stories, Nick. I could bore you all day with them, but as a judge, I was a judge here. I sat not on one, but on 2 capital death cases. And I say that not to be morbid, but because I know that the death penalty still is of interest internationally, that we here in the United States, a westernized democracy, still has the death penalty. As a judge, you don't get you don't make the law, you enforce it. So others decide that the death penalty should be part of the law, but as a judge, you're bound by the rules established by those who passed the laws. So I sat on not one but 2 death penalty cases as a judge. Both are probably the most memorable cases I've ever been involved with in my career, primarily because the facts were particularly heinous. One was a brutal abduction and rape of a young girl, 15 years old. The other one was the brutal, very brutal homicide and rape, frankly, of a little 3-year-old boy. So those things obviously stay with you and will for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and I could imagine they're not easy decisions either, right? You've got to obviously take into all the considerations and the facts. So yeah, respect for handling that as well. In Australia, just for your own knowledge, capital murders, you can't do that in Australia currently. So we do it just where you get life or certain life sentences that add up. Okay. In January 2003, nearly 18 years ago, you moved to the position of administrator of the Hamilton County Clerk's Office. This meant, Mr. Chairman, you led a staff of over 230 employees back then and managed a budget of over $15 million, which is about $21 million these days with inflation. With office, you collected revenue of over 130 million, which is about 180 million this day. How did you enjoy that, and what memories can you share of that?
Well, gosh, you really have gone over my bio pretty effectively there, Nick. So, yeah, that was a period where I transitioned really into the political realm and took the administrative day-to-day leadership role of a large bureaucratic office. Again, I was about 31 years old, and I had about 330 employees. We did manage that budget that you've talked about, multi-million-dollar budget. It was quite the experience. Again, some of these things have faded into memory, but anyone who's ever managed people knows that can be some of the hardest work that you'll ever do, because people are unpredictable, emotional, lots of other things that come with managing personnel. So for me, my memories of that are mostly positive, except for those times where you had to discipline people or terminate people's employment. During my tenure managing that office, we found an employee who had been stealing tens of thousands of dollars, and had done it in a very there's not a good way to steal, I guess, but in a very sneaky kind of way, and taking advantage of people being on vacations and other things. But ultimately, an audit caught that individual. and having to bring in criminal investigators and having to fire that individual. That's obviously a key memory of those years. But what comes most away from all of that for me is, and again, anyone listening would know this, but if you have to manage people, that can be a real challenge, because managing people comes with with that whole set of problems I've already discussed.
Awesome. How did you get involved in politics, public life, and the Republican Party?
Yeah. Well, Nick, this goes back to our shared Greek heritage here. In 1984. In 1984, I was a 13-year-old kid, and my parents put me on an airplane and sent me back to stay with my cousins in Greece, in Athens. And again, Nick, I can't remember your exact year of birth, but 1984. Again, I was 13. A lot of big things were happening in the world, in my world, at 13. First of all, at 13, you're kind of coming of age. You're not a kid anymore, but you're certainly not an adult. And at that point in the presidential election, Ronald Reagan was running for a second term here as president of the United States. He was wildly popular. One of the reasons I'm a Republican is because of Ronald Reagan. But he was wildly popular. His opponent selected a female running mate, Geraldine Ferraro. First time that an American running for president had selected a running mate that just wasn't a white male. So it was quite interesting, going back 26 years ago. And that really caught my attention as a young man, and I started paying attention. More importantly, Nick, they were conducting an election in Greece, and again, not having been to your wonderful country, I don't know what elections are like there, but I can tell you in Greece, the ferocity of the campaigning and the yard signs and the competition among the various political parties was wildly interesting to me, because we, in the United States, we have two political parties. Sometimes a third will creep in. I know we're one of the few places in the world where it's like that. Over there, there were 15 political parties, give or take. So that really, really intrigued me. I thought, how do they make this work? And I started to look at it and talk to my uncle. And then I realized they had an uncle who was a communist, and I couldn't believe it. I love my uncle. My uncle was a great guy, but he was a communist in the sense that he was for workers' rights and not a Stalinist dictator, but more someone who believed in workers' rights. Now, obviously, I have rejected over the course of my life that worldview, but realizing that there are different people who see the world different ways was really prompted an interest in politics that I carried forward and still do to this day. And that's 100% a true story. I'm a political junkie largely as a result of that trip. And I came back at 13 and 14 and had a lot of questions from my dad and a lot of questions of my own. And by the time I was 18, 19 years old, I don't think anybody knew more about politics at my age than I did. I say that immodestly, but I nevertheless stayed very, very involved and likely will for the rest of my life. I enjoy the political process, and I believe strongly in self-governance, and really enjoy the process of give and take that occurs in the political arena.
That's amazing. That's an amazing inspirational story. Being in politics, obviously, it can be quite vicious, and you need to have very thick skin. With you have obviously an abundance by doing it and being in it, by not letting especially anything taken personally. How do you best deal with that, and what have you best learned from it with your experience?
Well, that's the hardest part of it. Well, there's a couple things I don't really love about it, but look, you do get criticized. You get criticized often, and you get criticized publicly. Social media has made it so that on any given day, there's somebody out there spewing hate. You learn a lot. You learn a lot about yourself. You're glad to have a supportive family that is not judging you based on some of these ridiculous things said about you in social media. So you have to have thick skin. It's not always the most pleasant part of the job, but Nick, I think the best revenge is to live well. That's one of my life mottos, and I do my best to live well. I fight for what I believe in. I don't always win, but when we do what we think is right and honorable, and we act in a legal, moral, and ethical fashion, that's all we can ask for, and that's all I'm ever going to try to do. And anyway, so that thick skin question is a really good one for anybody who's in any sort of public arena. And again, I'm not I'm not a United States senator or mayor or anything like that, but in my little corner of the universe here, we do play around in politics, and sometimes that means you're going to get criticized, and I'm used to it by now.
For the listeners everywhere, and this is for me personally, how does the law side of things, so becoming a lawyer, a judge, how does that align with the American politics and the Republican Party and the Constitution, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question, and there are probably papers and books on this topic, but I've long asked myself why so many lawyers are drawn into the political arena. I think there's just a certain link, obviously, between those passing the laws and then those having to deal with them every single day, and enforcement, whether it be in a courtroom or in a contract. But there certainly is an appeal there for lawyers to be drawn in. And I also, again, knowing just almost very little, frankly, about the system of justice where you are, but I know where we are, the elections process plays out very much like a courtroom drama, in the sense that both sides make their arguments and then the jury decides, or a judge decides. And in politics, it's the same. We have in the American system, again, typically two candidates, but sometimes more, depending on the race. But they're making their pitch, and then the American people at the ballot box, the jury, so to speak, or the judge, so to speak, makes a decision. So there's this idea that you're presenting evidence. And that evidence ultimately must sway a certain group, and I think those two things are what make the profession of politician and lawyer sometimes dovetail.
Yeah, sure. And in 2004, you started to manage and consult on many political campaigns, beginning, I believe, with Bush and Cheney in 2004. Then serving on many other political campaigns up until most recently, which you mentioned earlier, Trump and Pence campaign. Which has been the most enjoyable campaigns that have you done, and why is that?
I haven't really been asked that question. That's a good one. I really did enjoy the 2004 Bush re-election campaign. That was my first, that was the first time I, shook the hand of a sitting United States president, the first time I set foot in the White House, the first time I, got my picture and taken with the president. Those things are, when you're, I was 33 years old then, those things are important memories. As I've sort of moved along in my career and gained a leadership role here in my community, they become a little less fun because the responsibilities are greater. But regardless of what the world thinks or Americans think of President Trump, he did make himself very available to people at the grassroots level like me. So I really did enjoy the times I got to spend with the president. I once greeted him as he descended the steps from Air Force One. That was a real treat for somebody like me. He did host a Greek Independence Day celebration every year at the White House, something I attended twice, including once taking my mom, to the White House here in Washington, D.C. to hear from and greet the president. So those are very, very fond memories for me politically. And again, regardless of what you think of the politician, there's still great respect owed in my mind to the occupants of these high offices. And for that reason, some of my greatest memories obviously are around the presidentials. But I'll say one other thing to anybody who's certainly listening and cares about any career. I've always believed this very strongly. It's about the people. It's never really about the place. It's not about the office. But any job that you do like this, where you're out and about and you're meeting people. I've met some of the best people that I could ever imagine meeting, and I've got some of the greatest friends, some of the most loyal and dedicated friends, and some of the most interesting people that I can ever imagine knowing as a young attorney. So I've been lucky, and those are some of the best memories. The people really are what are most memorable to me.
That's awesome. You've been recognized too for pushing innovations in online communication and the implementation of social media to deliver your political message and messages. This includes finding, fielding, recruiting, and retaining great candidates for the Republican Party. How do you work the process of this, and what makes a great political candidate in your eyes?
Well, great political candidates have to do a lot of things well. In the United States, again, fundraising is of paramount importance. Again, having no idea, candidly, maybe I should know more, Nick, given our relationship. Maybe when I come there, you can teach me. But here in the United States, an ability to raise funds, an ability to get people to financially support your campaign through political donations is really important, because that's how you get your message out. That's how you buy the various things that you need to be successful. So fundraising, number one. Number two, obviously, an allegiance to the principles of our political party are obviously that's a precursor to anything. Other things that make great candidates, a really good work ethic, the ability to communicate effectively, at every level. If you're an effective political candidate, you'll be talking with a chief executive officer of a major company in the morning, and you'll be walking through a neighborhood parade in the afternoon or the evening, and knowing that you have to be able to appeal to all those people. At the end of the day, great candidates are typically not born, they're made. So there's a lot of training that goes into helping candidates. And that's one of the things I still very much enjoy about my role. But what does it ultimately take to be a great candidate? You just have to win, baby.
That's what it's about. How have you enjoyed being the chairman and just in public life generally?
Yeah, I've enjoyed it a great deal, Nick. It's been a great experience for me, and something I didn't really know about when I graduated high school. If you'd have said your career at 49 years old is going to be chairman of the Hamilton County Republican Party, I didn't even know they existed. So it's been a wild ride, and I enjoy it a great deal.
Amazing. Where do you see life in the United States just generally now positioned for the future?
Well, again, that's a big question, but I like our position for the future. I think what the United States has remains unique in the world. I'm not sure it's going to stay that way forever, but I do think that we continue to offer leadership and a beacon of hope and liberty. I think that we continue to be a model for how capitalism can work to lift people up. We're not perfect. I don't believe for a second that we're a flawless nation, but I do believe that the model that we've established culturally, morally, is one that can work well for any country that adopts it. And I'm very mindful, Nick, of the fact that the people who may be listening are not in the United States and may have alternative views about our country. And I think it's incumbent upon Americans to listen to those views so we can maintain, great relationships with our wonderful allies, like the people in your great country. But I do maintain a certain patriotism about my country, and that's to be expected, right?
100%, and I really, knowing you, your personality, you're very open-minded and understand the rest of the views of the world, and always are open-minded to things. So from a personal perspective, I really appreciate your opinions as well, because they're quite spot on generally.
Glad to hear. Well, I've got a voter, but not in the United States, huh?
No, but I'm a supporter here, so that's all you need.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you.
Being at a young age, you are still, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
Well, I don't have any grandiose plans politically or anything like that. Where I live, it's changing. I'm a Republican here, and my area here is trending Democratic, especially under Donald Trump. Now, President Trump won the state of Ohio, won it easily, but in my neighborhood here, that is in the southwestern part of Ohio, it's gotten more Democratic, as it has in urban centers across America. We have a big city here in Cincinnati, and that has trended to be more Democrat. So anyway, where do I see myself? I see myself continuing to do what I'm doing. I still enjoy the practice of law. I don't have any plans really to run for anything. I think that that would be a natural progression for somebody who does what I do. I've run before as a judge, like we've discussed briefly, but I enjoy just doing what I'm doing. And, I hope to play a lot of golf and keep my health and watch my son and the rest of my family thrive. That's my main goal over the next decade.
That's awesome. Mr. Chairman, Alex, thank you very much for your time today. I do appreciate it. Thanks for coming on here.
Well, Nick, it's been a real pleasure, and I always enjoy connecting with you, and I hope to stay in touch for a long, long time. And anybody listening, greetings from the United States of America.
Thanks, Alex. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.